Accountant 2 is in theaters next week on Friday, April 25th from Prime Video. Gavin O'Connor, the director of the original Accountant and now the Accountant 2 here. We had Matt Damon on last year when we were talking about Air, and I asked him, like, is there any like sequel that you'd want to do? And he mentioned how the Accountant 2 is coming. And now he did.
Yeah.
That was last year.
Yeah.
And so now here we are.
Yeah.
And so you've been cultivating this caper for quite some time, is what you're saying?
Well, it's not about cultivating. We had a script in around 2019, 2020.
So 3 or 4 years after the original.
Yeah, it was just,
right.
there was a sort of a revolving door and musical chairs over at Warner Brothers. So we get traction, and then new executives come in, we have to start again. Then we had COVID, then we had a strike, and then there was another strike,
Yes.
and then Ben started his own studio, Artist Equity, with Matt.
Right.
And I'm not sure. I think Matt has to do 50% of the films at Artist Equity, and then he's allowed to work outside.
Yes.
But for Ben, it's 100%. Mm-hmm. So then it had to become a co-production with the studio and Ben's studio.
Oh God.
And that became, so we ended up leaving Warner Brothers. They graciously let us go because they didn't want to do a co-production, and we're at Amazon.
Now here you are.
And here we are.
And here we are, and it's in theaters nationally and globally next week, which is pretty cool. Because people can pick it up listening or watching right now. You're from New York City, or New York City area, right? You're
Long
from
Island,
Long Island, as we said on Staten Island, Long Island. Are you allowed to work with Matt and Ben from New York, like multiple times? At
They
that,
didn't
like
know
that's
I was
allowed.
from New York yet when the relationship started. So, yeah.
Well, they didn't talk to because you may be out of Long Island, but the Long Island certainly isn't out of you, brother.
I hang it in there.
I know,
Definitely.
It's kind of the Staten Island's out of me until you cut me off in traffic. Then
Oh,
you'll hear
really?
it. Yeah,
you get that aggressive?
Then
huh?
you'll hear it. Yeah, I mean,
it comes out.
Well, I mean, as you know, it helps to have a New York driving history around here in Los Angeles.
It does.
And when people
they don't
just
know how
like
to drive out here.
Oh, that's number one. And then number two, they're politely lining up to leave the 405, and you just like you take advantage of that nonsense.
Exactly.
You can just
It's a lot of exploiting.
Oh, please, it's fantastic. So, do you ever talk sports with these guys? Pretty much, Gavin, or not really? You just stay away from that subject matter.
No.
Okay, because I know that they're all Boston guys. This, that, the other thing.
I do remember when we were shooting. We were prepping Accountant 1. We were shooting in Atlanta, and I remember I was with Ben. We were working on some scenes, and it was a Saturday, and the Super Bowl was the next day.
Oh, Patriots Rams probably in Atlanta.
Exactly.
Okay.
No. This was we were shooting in 2015.
Oh,
so
2015. So this might have been.
Oh, that's Seahawks.
That's the Seahawks one, right?
Yeah, that's Patriots Seahawks.
Patriots Seahawks in Arizona.
Malcolm Butler.
See, this is the time where you just of the Patriots where you couldn't figure out what Super Bowl
No,
it was.
it's like-
Exactly.
It was just pretty much every year.
But what happened was Ben was telling me that Matt, on his way back to LA, was going to be stopping in Vegas for him to put a bet down.
This is before, I guess, you had apps for that sort of thing, huh?
That's what was happening. This was in 2015, yeah.
Wow.
It was a nice large number, too.
Ended up cashing.
I'm sure they did. If it was Patriots to win, unless it was the Eagles one. You can't tell.
Yeah, Eagles won it.
He's a fellow masshole over there, that guy.
Oh, is he?
Oh, yeah. That's right. So, all right. So, Gavin O'Connor here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you want people to know about this sequel, about The Accountant 2, for fans of the original? What would you want people to know about it?
I really intentionally refreshed the tank. I'd never made a sequel before, and the early conversations just keep taking the DNA from the first one and kind of and I was like, I want to just entertain myself to start with. Like, I don't want to just repeat what I did. So it's very different tonally. I very intentionally brought Brax in, so I wanted to really explore the relationship with the two brothers.
Yes.
And them trying to fix each other. And I knew I could mine some really good comedy out of those two guys. So it's a lot funnier, this one. And lastly, I'd say because of, Ben and I had made a movie after Accountant 2 called The Way Back.
Yes.
And we opened on a Friday, and theaters closed on the Monday because of COVID.
Oh, my God.
And we were just dead. So that was a heartbreaker. So I just wanted to make my version of a popcorn film to get people and it's what's going on. We got to get people back in the theater.
Right.
So I really wanted to give people a really fun, entertaining movie experience, and I think you do get that.
And it's, again, globally next week in theaters. Prime Video brings you The Accountant 2, the director Gavin O'Connor here on the Rich Eisen Show. Yeah, you just mentioned about the way back. We talked about that with Ben. It's a basketball coach and a great story behind all of that. Warrior, you wrote Warrior. Now, you're an MMA guy. You have to be, right, to write a film like Warrior and direct that. Did you learn anything about the MMA world that you want to share with everybody here?
I really wasn't. It wasn't about the. I could have made the Brothers Boxers, but there's been so many boxing movies. I just didn't want to do that.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, and I just was like, and I love MMA. So, but it didn't have to be that. There was just so many things going on in our world then, and in contemporary America, and I wanted to explore. The working class reeling from sort of this 1-2 punch of the recession and war. So I really want to just explore that. I wanted to explore fathers and sons. It's very personal. Nick was my dad in a lot of ways in the movie. My brother and I both went with separate parents, divorced, very dysfunctional and toxic home. So I was just sort of excavating my own stories as a child and probably my own traumas. And I just put it all out into that movie, and that's really what was going on. And in the end, it was I was going for what I call an intervention in a cage, where one brother basically beats the shit out of the other brother, and then he has to. Tommy's character had to be reborn, and that's kind of what I was going for.
The Nick you're referring to is Nolte.
Yeah.
You got a good Nick Nolte story from the set, or from? You're laughing. I know. You got a good one for me that would be suitable for the audience.
Well, suitable.
Nice.
You know what he would do, which was so funny? I love Nick. I wrote the part for Nick. At that time, I was living up north in Malibu, and he was my neighbor. We became really good friends.
Your neighbor?
Yeah, he was my neighbor.
Did you ever, knock on his door for something?
He would knock on my door more often than I would. Gavin, I want me to come by and say hello. Come on, my daughter would paint his toenails. We just did really odd stuff.
Come on, man.
He's the best. But you know what he used to do when we were shooting on Warrior?
Okay.
Just as I started to roll, he'd get his guitar and he'd start playing. And I'm like, Nick, how many movies have you made? Don't you know when you're rolling, obviously we're going to be hearing, he's like, I'm sorry, Gavin, I just got happy fingers here. I couldn't help myself. So, but everything else would be, that's my G-rated story. There's really nothing else I can tell you
The G-rated stories, he would play guitar just before takes, and then as a neighbor, he would come over and have his toenails. Your daughter would paint his toenails.
Yes, he should. Yeah.
Any specific color?
Yellow.
Oh, very good.
Yellow. Always yellow.
Who knew? That is so cool. Your next door neighbor is Nick Nolte.
Well, not literally next door, but we were neighbors right down the street. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Close enough that he can walk and knock on my door.
Gavin, was there a reason you set the movie in Pittsburgh? That's where I'm from, and I love the movie.
Oh, you're from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Altoona, Pittsburgh.
So
area.
I initially wrote the movie for Long Beach, California. But there wasn't we didn't have the tax incentive.
There you go.
So they gave me, and I was doing in Lionsgate, they said you could pick anywhere that it's a tax incentive. And I started scouting. And when I got to Pittsburgh, it was just working class poetry visually. And
Did you say Lionsgate?
Yeah.
Isn't that Thomas Tull? Isn't that, am I right? Or isn't Tull a part owner of the Steelers? I think he is.
Is he part of owner of Lions? He's one of the owners of Lions.
I don't know why I would connect the two. I might be wrong.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. I know who Thomas Tull is, but I'm not sure.
So you threw it in Pittsburgh. Okay.
I put it in Pittsburgh just because visually, it was a very blue collar, working class movie. So when I got there, I'm like, this is the best. Yeah.
Done. All right. I've really used every fiber of my being to not talk to you about Miracle since the first second you walked out here.
Sure.
Because it's one of my favorite sports movies of all time, and the compliment that I can do my best to pay you is it's about the most popular and the most well-known sports story of the 20th century. I believe it was voted as such over and over again when this was being discussed at the turn of the century. And I'm on the edge of my seat. And I know how it's going to work out, right? It is unbelievable. When did that first cross your desk to be the director of this film, Gavin?
So I had made my first film called Tumbleweeds. It was a tiny little independent movie that I financed myself. I pretty much sold everything I owned, the rest on credit cards. And I made that. And I had a career. I went to Sundance, and we had a bidding war, and I won the Filmmakers Trophy and all that stuff. So,
Congratulations.
So all that happened.
Yes.
And then I had written my next script, and then 9/11 happened, and the script I had written dealt with corrupt police officers in New York City. So that was not happening after 9/11.
Indeed.
And my agent said, what else do you have? I didn't have anything else. I was so naive. I'm like, this is what I was going to do. And I learned the lesson of I need to be moving different projects forward. And he said, just be open to reading other people's material. And I said, okay. And I got the script from Miracle. And to be totally honest, I didn't think it was very good.
Was it originally about a love story between Herb Brooks and his wife? That's a rumor I heard.
No.
Never was. Okay.
No.
All right.
No. You know, it was a historical document that had all the moments that we all know.
Good use of that word, obviously, in reference to that movie.
Yes, exactly. But what it didn't have was the connective tissue between the big moments that were based on, character and emotionality and pulling back the curtain of things we don't know and things like that. So I went in and met with them, and I said, look, I'd want to rewrite the script. And also, I want to, if I got the job, I said I would hire, because when I was in the room, they said they wanted all the young actors in Hollywood to play. I'm like, I would never do that. Like, I grew up playing sports all my life. I played football in college. Like, I know athletics pretty well. And I said, I would never, you got to hire. I said, I can't teach actors to play hockey at the level I need them. I'd rather get hockey players and teach them to not act and just behave.
Sure.
And so.
Plus, that also mirrors the team itself, right?
Exactly.
Like they were not stars.
Exactly.
They were not stars.
Exactly. But they're not
Sure.
thinking that way.
Okay.
So for some reason, I got the job. I made my first movie was under $1 million. So now all of a sudden, I'm doing a $40 million studio film. I just approached it like it was a little movie, and we started searching for these kids. So all the players, the players from Minnesota in real life, I cast kids from Minnesota. Players from Mass. Kids from Mass.
Nice.
If you were a lefty, Jack O'Callahan, I'm not. You can't be a righty and play that. So I was made sure I was the fidelity to all of that.
Interesting.
And then, but the Herb Brooks part was casting Herb was very tricky.
Okay, so walk me through that process.
Well, the studio wanted Michael Douglas, and Michael actually looked kind of like Herb.
Sure.
So, and I'm a big fan of Michael. I think he's a wonderful actor, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm open to that. And I went and met with Michael. I met with Michael at his place, and he would not give me a straight answer on whether he would do the skating. And I said to him, look, Herb was a great hockey player, and he was also the coach of he played in 1960 on the team. He's an Olympic hockey player. Right. So I said, you got to be able to get on the ice and look like you can skate. And I said, we have about 6 months before I start rolling. If you skate every day, I'll get you and he would say yes, but then he would talk about his knee, and he had a body double, and we just kept swirling in this. And finally, and then I had to go back a second time to meet with him because the studio so wanted Michael. And then I remember I said to the studio, I said, I'm getting Bill Clinton. He keeps skating around the skating issue. I'm getting Bill Clinton. Sure. In any event, I said, I just really want to meet Kurt Russell.
That name came into your head.
Because once again, I played sports all my life, and I was a cinema junkie all my life. And I knew that Kurt was a baseball player.
Yes.
If you have never been in a locker room, you can smell the inauthenticity. And I knew Kurt grew up in locker rooms. He was an actor, but he was also a baseball player. Mm-hmm. His son was in Vancouver playing hockey at the time. Mm-hmm. So they let me fly up to Vancouver. Who picks me up at the airport? Kurt Russell. And that tells you everything about Kurt. He picked me up. Mm-hmm. And when I got in the car with him, the first thing he said to me was, I swear to God, he looks at me and goes, what do you think of the script? And 1,000 thoughts start flashing in it. But I never got the bullshit gene. I'm just always telling, and I go, it's not very good. And he goes, we're going to be good. Because he was marking my card. So, and then when I got to his house, I told him what I was going to do with the script and what I was going to change. And he had said, he goes, why do you want to do it? I said, when I was a boy, I'm sure like you, we're probably close to the same age. I remember being this close to the television screen.
Hell yeah.
Watching that game.
Hell yeah.
And I said to Kurt, I said, if I can just replicate the emotions that I had, we're going to be good. And I remember when the game was over, people in my neighborhood, pots and pans. I mean, it was chaos out there. People, it was that event that
it was
right. So, yeah,
it was. So the two scenes.
Do you remember where you were?
Of course, but I also remember, having to stay away from. Because we're from the same area, 1010 Wins or 880 News, because it was on tape.
Exactly, yeah.
It was on tape. We had to stay away because we didn't want. We had to go through sports blackout.
We want to pretend it was live,
right? So, I totally remember my house, my basement in Staten Island, watching it on the color TV in the household. I swear to God. All right, in 1980. So the two scenes from the film that obviously always leap out are the scene where Herb Brooks makes them skate in the dark, right, over and over and over again. Yeah, you had to get that right.
Yeah,
but the one is period. End of story is the speech to the team. How did you research that and stick the landing on that scene, Gavin?
Well, the speech was actually in the original script that I had gotten.
The moment speech.
Yeah, the moment speech, and if I remember correctly, I think a lot of that was actually what he said. I think so, but I don't know for certain if it was like 100%. But that's what I was told, and I had so many conversations with Herb.
You did?
Oh my God, I had so many conversations with Herb. I had conversations with Herb and like 4 or 5 of the players. And I actually discovered it became Rashomon because everybody had their different perspective on the same event, which was liberating. But I'll tell you something interesting and beautiful about Herb. I discovered that it took him 3 months, in the script, it took him 3 months to choose a team. And I said to Herb one day, I said, Herb, why did you spend 3 months choosing the team? Because I had something else I wanted to do in my head. I said, why would you spend 3 months choosing your team? And he gave me all the answers about the politics of the IOC and all these different Olympic organizations. So he said he kind of had to bullshit. Can I say bullshit?
No, you did.
He had to he had to politic his way through it.
As you just did that line.
Yes, I did,
keep going.
He had to politic his way through it. But he said to me, he said, I had a piece of paper with the 20 kids, day one, and after 3 months, those are the 20 kids I picked.
Come on.
So he said to me, and I said, well, Herb, watching you spend 3 months in a movie is going to be really, really boring. I said, what I'd like to do, and because I really believe this in art, is you take it has to be the spirit of the truth. I said, I'm going to have you pick the team in a day. And I said, so we're going to remythologize your story. You're going to pick. I said, I could never do it if you wouldn't have done that. And I said, now in my version, you're going to piss everybody off, start ruffling feathers right out of the gate. And I go, that's a great way to start a character. And he goes, I love it. I would have done that anyway. Yes. And he was totally, and if he didn't support me, I couldn't have done it, but he was totally down with it. And I said, we're remythologizing. He said, it's fine. It's what I would have done. And so that's what I did.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. How many takes for the speech with Kurt Russell?
Not a lot. You know what Kurt Russell is? He could have made my life so difficult. I'm a newbie, never made a studio film. He's a big movie star. He was so generous to me and so supportive. And I was obsessed. I was feeding him interviews with Herb Brooks so he can get it right in the clothes and all stuff. Kurt nailed it. I mean, he's such a pro. I mean, probably maybe 2 or 3 takes. That's it.
Can't get enough of that scene, man.
Yeah.
Seriously. Cannot get enough of that scene. I will watch it over and over again. Sometimes it'll just pop in my Instagram algorithm and I will stop what I'm doing unless I'm driving. But it is unbelievable. It's so special. That movie is so special. And we've had Al Michaels here multiple times because we annually go through every year. It's like he sits here in this studio and we just reminisce on the anniversary or close to it. We just did it again. It's 45 years now. And he loves just telling stories about everything like that, but he loved doing your movie,
Well, he was great to work with, and I had lunch with him about a year ago because I'm doing this Madden thing, and So I was asking a bunch of questions.
That's you
about
next,
John.
huh? You're doing the Madden one?
I'm doing a Madden limited series
Okay.
about John Madden.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Is that the one with Nick Cage? Is Nick Cage doing that?
no,
Or
so they're
that's the other
doing a
one?
movie.
Got it.
They're
All
doing
right.
a movie version.
Right.
We were initially going to do a movie version, but I was like, how do you reduce John Madden's life to 2 hours? I didn't know how to do it. So
Sure.
we're doing, but we also, I flew up to Pleasanton. I met with his family. So we have his son, Mike, in Virginia, and the
sure.
whole family that are basically aligned with us.
Right.
And actually, Tom Brady's an executive producer with me on it.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah. So we're doing,
Oh, you're
we're
going to
doing
make
it at
Ben and Matt jealous, man.
I know.
Careful.
I know. I haven't told them about that yet.
So I'm sorry. We have like we got a heart out for the
Yeah.
radio. So you had about a minute to go. You had lunch with Al? Did you have?
Well, I had lunch with Al, but he remembers some of our miracle story very differently than I remember. Like he was telling me some stories. I'm like, that's not what happened at all, Al. Like you're changing what really happened. He's like, no, that's a whole. But so, but he was
Awesome.
great to work with because I had to redo when I shot all the action, excluding some of the seminal moments. I was had to redo some of the stuff, and then we had to re-record all his dialogue. So,
My word.
yeah,
Dude, great stuff. Thank you for coming. Everybody
Pleasure.
see The Accountant 2 in theaters globally next week, Friday, April 25th. Gavin O'Connor, the director, here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.